Thanks everyone for making it today. Let me go ahead and share the agenda. Let's see. Okay, and so the first thing on the agenda today is a review of our November 4th meeting notes. And I just didn't know if anyone had any changes or corrections. I went ahead and included the results of our survey that we did during the meeting. All right, well, it sounds like no comments there. Okay, and so the next thing on the agenda, we have one community that's unable to participate with our current schedule due to a set of ongoing meetings. And so what I wanted to do is ask if we were to go for like a Thursday morning, if there would be any conflicts with that, or if there's any times that would work best for everybody.
Natasha, this is Frank. Thursday mornings are fine except for third Thursdays.
Okay.
Every planning organization in Southwest Missouri meets on third Thursdays.
Well, and that's usually when our board meetings are too, so I probably wouldn't want to put those on the same days anyway. I'll just kind of have to watch, since we're not necessarily doing like a certain Thursday of the month, we'll just have to kind of watch when that falls. Does anyone else have any other concerns with that? So what that means then is our January 6th meeting, as long as I don't hear back from anybody else, we'll probably go ahead and move that to January 7th, which would be that Thursday. But I'll send out a revised calendar and everything once we get that set. Okay, so then the next item on the agenda, our major thoroughfare plan implementation survey. And so let me switch the screen share here. We have not heard back from everyone yet. Let's see. There we go. See, it looks like, I think Greene County might have answered twice, but the second time had more information. So Joel, if that was you, thank you for going back in on that. But we've heard back from MoDOT and Willard and Springfield and Nixa, in addition to Greene County. It looks like we're kind of 50-50 on how the communities are using our design standards, which ties in with some of the conversation that we had. You know, they're useful, their guidance, and some use them directly implemented in the code. So thanks for those who have filled that out. As far as the actual standards go, I've got that in a report that we're reviewing with the downloaded with the actual measurements and everything. And so we'll summarize that as we go forward. Were there any questions regarding the survey, or if you haven't had a chance to fill it out yet? Okay, and then I actually had one more thing I was going to have everyone do. So let me pull this back up. If you can go to menti.com, I've got 3 questions, and these are just going to be more on just kind of answer them as they come up, and it'll automatically take you to the next slide. But let me get this shared out. Okay. So as we're coming up, I just wanted some suggestions. Oh, we have a few additional people. We'll go ahead and wait for them to join. Okay. Hi, Kirk and Adam. I've just pulled up, we're doing one quick Menti poll. So if you can go to menti.com, and then the code is 9160874. And it's just 3 self-directed questions. One is looking, how should we handle flexibility in the design standards? Do we want some sort of kind of a matrix typology system? Do we just want overlays for very specific corridors? Or do we just want to look at not addressing certain standards?
Natasha, I have a question
Yeah.
about removing specific standards. Does that mean not have a standard for it, or maybe that it has a range instead of one number?
I guess I was thinking not having a standard, but and we can have a discussion if you guys want to, kind of go that route. But I was thinking that, like, when you say range, what would you think of would be good to have a range for?
I'm trying to think. Do you specify like a lane width in the standards?
Okay.
So like maybe it says 10 to 12 feet or 9 to 12 feet or 9 to 11 instead of saying, 10 or 11.
So maybe more as a suggestion as opposed to a minimum
Yeah.
or a maximum. Okay.
Or it could even be like, recommend 11, but it could look 9 to, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's flexibility there as opposed to just not saying anything about it.
Okay. I guess I was thinking remove, but then we could always still have those suggestions. And then the next question is, what one street in your community would benefit the most from flexible design standards? And then the last one is just kind of ranking from not important to important. What principles should guide our approach? So Okay, it looks like we're getting close to having everyone answer these, so I'll give you just a few more moments. Okay. Well, we'll real quick, just looking over these, it's looking like you guys might prefer somewhat of more of a matrix system, looking at street typologies, allowing for a little bit more flexibility, but kind of overall based on what's happening, as opposed to looking at specific corridors or removing standards entirely. I see there were some generalizations on one street, whether it was existing streets or collectors, keeping those things more flexible, which I think also goes back to some of the conversation we had in prior meetings. It looks like some of the major streets that have a mix of kind of land uses all the way up and down are those that seem to also come up as having more flexibility. Or let's see, for Greene County, mentioning Farm Road 132 east of Springfield. And that's maybe, there's some cases where we have classifications that, on the map serve the purpose of meeting so much every corridor, or, so many premier materials per whatever density and that sort of thing. But looking at, maybe is that appropriate for that location? So did anyone want to comment on any of these answers in particular? Okay.
See a trend with the arterials that are older arterials where we didn't have access management when they were developed.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of some of what we're seeing on this list too. Okay, and so then on the last slide, most important came up connectivity and circulation, and then a pretty close tie between integration of land use and streets, street function, and the needs of all users, with street character kind of getting the lowest ranking on that. That's something probably more to leave to the communities than to OTO. But at the same time, I would want to make sure that we're probably still supportive of all of these things and allowing the communities to then be able to make those decisions. Anyone want to comment on this slide? Okay, quiet group this morning. All right, well, thanks for doing that. I think that'll help, and our goal is to have some kind of outline proposals that we can review in January. So I'm going to stop sharing that for a moment and come back to the agenda. So then next on the agenda is talking about project prioritization and performance measurement. And as we go forward, and we'll have our public input results in January as well. That survey is going to wrap up on the 17th, and that'll give us some guidance as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how our project prioritization has evolved, and we'll probably want to kind of step back a little bit too and talk more generally where, you know, what we've evolved our STIP prioritization into, you know, is for a specific list of projects. But let's see. So our prioritization in 2016, we had some major categories. So priority projects. We used to have a map called the Priority Corridors of Regional Significance, and you receive points if you were a priority on that map, or if the street or the project was along one of those corridors. We no longer really have that. We've gone to some other kind of high volume corridor concept, and then looking at some other factors. And so that's one that probably we may want to talk about how we handle priorities. Safety, we just did like a real simple index based on, you know, better or worse rates, and then if there was a concern that maybe wasn't reflected in the crash data, and then removing a railroad. Now we go to, you know, really just looking at the actual rate and then scoring that based on, you know, kind of an index over the actual rate, 3-year fatality average, the 3-year injury average. And so that turns into a score. And then we're looking at congestion management, and that's evolved as well, whereas before we just generally looked at a volume to capacity ratio, and then we compared it to how it complies with the major thoroughfare plan, access management, and then if the project was in the regional ITS architecture. So now what we're doing with congestion management, it's kind of more of a scale depending on how it meets that volume to capacity ratio. And then looking at our model run going forward from the prior plan. And so that's something that's a little bit different too, in that we probably, I guess we have like the no build model run, so we can always use that. And then let's see, environmental justice. Now this is one that because we had already narrowed the projects in the plan down, including the score, we really kind of scaled that back for the STIP prioritization. So that is something that we'll probably want to keep a little bit more in depth in how we approach that with the plan. And then multimodal, looking at connecting multiple modes or reducing trips. Whereas right now, it's still kind of that intermodal benefit. And then we added a separate thing for being on the freight corridor, statewide freight plan, and then freight traffic. And then our last one before was economic development, and we've always kind of struggled with how to best capture this, I guess, with the scoring. And so this is where we had put the state freight plan before, and then also the communities just got to, you know, set some higher priorities. And so We've also added since then travel time and bridge condition. And that travel time's on a bit of a scale too, depending on the type of corridor. And so we really have evolved our prioritization since the plan. But I didn't know, a lot of you guys have been going through your own comprehensive planning process and looking at your own priorities. And one thing I really wanted to ask about was how you thought we might be able to capture kind of economic development or potential for making those improvements so that other things can happen. And I know we've kind of been running into that a little bit with some projects that have just come up recently around the area. So I'll throw that out there first.
Natasha, I'm sorry. What are you asking for?
Oh, sorry. How do you think we might be able to capture economic development with the prioritization? Because we can come up with a lot of other measurements, for various things, especially as we look for what we're wanting to prioritize or what categories we're wanting to prioritize. But I know economic development always comes up, and that's always the one we struggle the most with in how to capture.
Hey, Natasha.
Mm-hmm.
I think something that might be worth looking at is we had one of our planners, Chris Tabor, kind of look into suitability of economic development along corridors. And there were a number of factors that went into that. But he came up with some pretty good maps that kind of identified parcels for us that had potential to develop rather than parcels that had potential not to develop, like they had a lot of issues. So I can probably send you some of those and you guys can kind of look at the categories of that. I think it'd be a good thing to apply region wide.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Off the top of your head, do you know any of those things that he included?
Yeah, he looked at like the size of the lots. So if they were already broken up into a bunch of single family, probably wasn't going to develop pretty quickly. Looked at transportation, looked at whether, in our case, whether we had utilities in the area that could serve the lots. Looked at like the sinkholes layer to see if the properties were riddled with sinkholes or not. So if a property did have a ton of sinkholes on it, it's probably not going to develop soon. So those were just some of the factors. And then I'm not exactly sure how he ended up weighting those, but those were some of the factors that went into that.
Okay, thanks.
And Natasha, I think it might be helpful to talk with the chamber. I don't know if we have any purchases on this committee or not. I don't think he's here today, but they might be able to tell us about what issues they face when trying to market the area or specific sites and where there are transportation shortcomings. And then maybe I think SIMCOG has a region-wide economic development plan. And it may have mentioned, I don't know if it mentioned specific needs or if it's just more broadly. I don't know what the plan has in it, but they might have something that is helpful too.
Okay. Yeah, and we're actually looking to kind of set up a meeting with them to talk about some things, and I think the SEDS would be a good thing to go over in that regard as well. Okay, are there other things that you see and I don't know exactly how we want to, I think we've got our STIP prioritization process, we went through and we refined that. That is a much narrower list of projects that we're looking at and things that have already been vetted through the long range planning process. So this is kind of an opportunity as well to look at measurements that you can influence what goes on to that list in the first place. I don't know if anyone feels like there's any concerns with what we've already been able to identify as eligible. Yeah. Jeff or Garrett Tyson, I know you're new in your position at NICSA. I didn't know if you had any thoughts just from your experience in the past or looking at what you guys have on your list. Jeff, I know, we've amended the long range plan so that, NICSA's had some newer projects that have come up since, just in the last 5 years. So if there's anything we can do to kind of help vet that process as well. Or Adam or Joel, anything from the county perspective? Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention, when we go to do this prioritization process and we select all the projects that we're going to submit, in the past we have done what we call like cost bands, because this plan does have to be fiscally constrained. And so what we've done in the past is the first 5 years are the tip that we've already developed. And so we'll be working on that this spring anyway. And then, we've kind of broken it up into 5 years and 5 years and 10 years, where kind of those outline years are constrained by here's how much revenue we think we'll have over that 5 years. Well, we have kind of since then, the guidance has come out that we need to have each year of the first 10 years fiscally constrained. And so those first 5 years we'll be able to do with the tip for the most part, because that is constrained year by year. But then basically we'll need to develop the equivalent of kind of a second tip. And we will need to also constrain that year by year. So when you're looking at what projects you think you would like to include in the next plan, we're going to need to be also probably more specific in what that selection looks like. So in that regard, we will be in kind of the January, February timeframe looking for your list of projects to include in the plan and the tip. So be thinking about what things you would want to submit for your community going forward for the next, I guess, 25 years at this point. But then we'll also need to figure out how to break those down and do them year by year for the first 10 years. And so that's where that prioritization process will come in. Kirk, anything from Springfield's perspective you want to mention, or just want to make sure everyone's had a chance to add to the conversation?
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay, thanks.
We might talk about it though and see if we can come up with some economic development measures or indicators.
Okay, thank you. Brittany, is there anything you want to add regarding that guidance on the fiscal constraint for year by year? or how that coordination works with MoDOT?
No, I think you covered it, Natasha. I have another MPO I work with, and Federal Highway was participating on one of the meetings that they had, and it came up there, and we've seen it since then. So I just wanted to pass that information along. As you guys are kind of drafting that, I think we can work more directly with each other just to make sure we're on the same page and you guys are understanding it, or if you need assistance. And I think, Frank will be able to help with that as well.
All right, well, thank you. So let's see. And then I guess performance measurement, I'll kind of fall in line with, the things that we're prioritizing. So as we develop the recommendations from the plan, I just wanted to mention we have so many more things we're able to measure now than when we first developed. Really we started talking about performance measures in 2009 and 10. They became part of that 2011 long-range plan, and we stuck with those in 2016. But we've received a lot more guidance over time from the feds regarding the nationally required performance measures. But then, MoDOT's done a lot to really make their data accessible. As before we kind of gave them locations and they were able to produce this information, we're able to go in and develop those results ourselves. So I think we'll have a lot of things that we can review with that. So the next thing I just wanted to mention, our public input. We are kind of in the last 2 weeks of that, we've done a big push to try to get survey kind of results. We've sent out a postcard to 10,000 residents in the, residences in the OTO area. We are pushing on social media platforms, and I think NICSA was able to share with all of their utility customers. And so if you have any additional avenues for kind of helping us get the word out, I included information in the email for that. I think I saw Springfield posted on their Twitter for us yesterday. We've got both Facebook and Twitter posts that can be shared as well. And the libraries, I think, are also going to do a push this weekend. So we're going to close the survey on the 17th. People do have a chance to win. Let's see. We are up to, I was just going to look real quick, how many responses as of this morning. We have about 725 responses right now. So yeah, any last minute pushes you guys can help make would be great. I can tell you tolls are not showing up very favorably at this point as a way to fund transportation. Everyone likes our scenic beauty and our trail system. So it's a lot of the same positives that came out of our visioning efforts that we did earlier this year. So. Okay, well, I don't want to keep you guys on here for the sake of being on here, but are there any last minute comments or anything you want to share with us as we kind of work on some of the nuts and bolts over the next month? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good holiday season this December. Stay healthy.
Hey, Natasha.
Yeah.
I do have one comment. Our council's kind of been emphasizing quality of place. They want us to, as we work on our roadways, even move forward with maintenance activities, they would like us to improve the overall look of these projects, kind of more beautification.
Okay.
More attention to just the overall look, not just simple maintenance. They want us to address trying to make them look better, you know, and that includes, you know, connecting the sidewalks and making sure that the ADA crossings are in place, those kind of things. Include some landscaping. Then there's also been comments about a lot of our overhead utilities. That's pretty awesome expense there.
Yeah.
But that kind of little bit of beautification, they believe will help encourage more development and encourage those developing to enhance their properties as well. That's kind of been the overriding direction that I'm hearing. So I thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I think I've seen that in some of the different results that have come out from the input process. So it'll be good to maybe find a way where we can help support that from our perspective. And at the end of the day, maybe it just means making sure that our proposed project costs for the plan include being able to afford some of those additions to those projects.
Yes.
Okay. Well, any other comments?
Just to follow up on what Kirk said, we've written 3 agreements with, I think, 3 different cities in the past year, besides Springfield, to beautify something on a project. So I don't think it's just Springfield who's interested in that.
Okay. And again, you know, it's, you know, how we prioritize, how we lay things out. And, you know, if these are the things that are our priorities, then that's important that we find a way to make sure that those things happen too. So thank you. And we'll reach out to SIMCOG and the area chambers and make sure we get maybe some guidance on how, you know, those economic development communities are looking at that approach. And hopefully we'll have some, you know, draft things that we can have a more full discussion on in January.
Yeah,
So
I think will be
Mhm.
very helpful with providing some input there.
Yeah, well, and thanks for all the guidance to help us get that far. So, all right, well, thanks everyone and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too. Be safe. Wear your mask.
Thanks. Merry Christmas.
Be safe, everybody.